thousands of families in England could be entitled to tens of thousands of pounds back from the NHS for care fees they should never have paid in the first place. But they only have until the end of the month to register a claim.
Yeah, you've got to be quick. Martin Lewis is going to be here in a few minutes to tell you if your family could be entitled to huge sums of money back. But first, let's hear from one woman who successfully claimed over £80,000 on behalf of her dad, who had Parkinson's and dementia.
Dad was a very proud man, family man, always was. He also was a very proud Marine. He served in the Marines during the war and he became a postman, and he loved every minute of it. All the way through Mum and Dad's life, we always said we'd never ever put Dad or Mum in a care home, and we tried very, very hard to keep Dad at home. It was probably one of the hardest decisions I think I've ever had to make, to actually be faced with the fact that he's got to go in to a care home. Dad was now incontinent, in a wheelchair, unable to do anything for himself, even feeding himself. It broke my heart, absolutely broke my heart. Because the care home fees were going to be quite considerable for Dad's care, I asked the PCT Social Services about any assistance with funding. I was told categorically that Dad's medical needs were not high enough to qualify for NHS continuing care, which is the funding. And my brother saw an article in a newspaper about a lady who'd got the funding back for her mother's case, and her symptoms were almost mirroring Dad's. We got £84,000 back of Dad's savings, basically. You're not doing it for you, you're doing it for your relative, and that money is their right. It's their right to have that.
Absolutely.
We're already deep in conversation on the subject here. Martin Lewis joins us. Dawn was successful in her claim there. Why is it important that we do it now?
There is a deadline for people in England that if you had care home fees between 2004 and March 2011, you must start a reclaim by the 30th of September. Now, that is less than 3 weeks away. All starting a reclaim means is getting in a letter to your local primary healthcare trust and just putting in a marker. That's what you have to do. But if this is ringing a bell with you, if it's you or you've had a relative who's been in a care home at any time since 2004, and you were paying, whether you were paying for care or you were paying for accommodation or a mix of the two, in some circumstances, the NHS should have been paying for you and you can get your money back. Right. Now, there are millions of people out there whose ears will be pricking up here. I have to say this is a tough fight. Not everyone is going to get it. It probably applies to thousands or tens of thousands of people who are actually due a payback. But if you are due a payback, that £84,000 sum we just saw, well, that's not a big one.
Really?
No, that's not a big one. We haven't picked the extreme example.
Okay.
I mean, well, if you just think about it, if you're paying for care, it can be £10,000 or £20,000 a year, and we're talking going back to 2004. So £200,000 would not be extraordinary. So large people who are interested, we're funneling it down to those who would get it. I'm not promising everybody who this rings a bell to would get the money, but if you do get it, we can be talking hundreds of thousands of pounds. So that deadline is urgent.
Absolutely, you've got to get in there right away. Anyone else that this would affect? Right.
The rule is this. If someone has what's known as a primary healthcare need, now that is a very severe healthcare need, or it's really interesting, the NHS doesn't have a definition. There's no if you've got cancer, there's none of that. Right. So it could be a primary healthcare need or two severe healthcare needs. Let me give you an example. It's mental and physical health. So if you have a relative who has dementia, severe dementia and incontinence, that would probably qualify you for what's called continuing healthcare from the NHS. Right. And that means the NHS should be paying for everything, your care fees and your accommodation. Now, circumstances in which they wouldn't would be there was a provisional assessment. They decided the condition wasn't severe enough. Your relative went into a care home. The condition deteriorated, but you were never reassessed. That's very common. Right. Someone who was discharged from hospital and went straight into care. Another common one. People who just thought they were too affluent and they would never qualify for any care and didn't get the assessment initially. And those people who paid for the care, where the NHS paid for the care, but it didn't pay for the accommodation. You are entitled to both, but we're only talking severe conditions, and it's called continuing healthcare. So that is a lot of people will be sitting there going, that happened to my auntie. And what I would say is, if you're listening now, don't assume your friend who you know this happened to knows about it. It's widely under-publicised. Yeah. If you're watching now and you know someone, see it as a responsibility to get the message out to people who this affects, even if it's not you directly.
Yeah, it's very quick. You've
Absolutely.
got to get right in there.
You do.
Straight away.
So what you have to do is you write this letter to your, if you don't know who it's called your continuing healthcare coordinator in your local NHS. If you don't know who that is, talk to your GP, call your local NHS, and what you're going to do is you're going to write to them saying, I think we should have a provisional assessment. It's like a checklist to see whether it qualifies. If you pass through that, they do a full assessment, and they will do all the medical healthcare for you. You can do this yourself. There's more help I've put on the Daybreak website, or you can go through lawyers, but you will be giving them 20% of what you get back. I'm not militant on not using lawyers in this one, but you can. Alzheimer's Society's been campaigning on this. They as well believe you can do this yourself, as do I. I've put info on the Daybreak website, but go quick.
Well done.
Go quick.
Thank you very much to you, as always.
Absolutely. Thank you.